As you know, we began our enforcement of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973 yesterday with cruise missile strikes on selected air defense systems and facilities ashore, as well as air defense command and control infrastructure. I reported yesterday that coalition forces launched more than 110 Tomahawk missiles from ships and submarines in the Mediterranean. That number eventually rose to a total of 124 in the hours after I briefed you. We judge these strikes to have been very effective in significantly degrading the regime's air defense capability, to include their ability to launch many of their SA-5s, which are the long-range surface-to-air missiles, the SA-3s, and the SA-2s. The slide at my left shows a rough depiction of where these additional strikes were executed. The initial strikes that I briefed you yesterday are highlighted in yellow, and the strikes after I briefed you are in red. There has been no new air activity by the regime, and we have detected no radar emissions from any of the air defense sites targeted, and there has been a significant decrease in the use of all Libyan air surveillance radars, which most of those appear to be limited now only to the areas around Tripoli and Sirte. We are not ruling out further such missile strikes against valid targets if and when the need arises. In the past 24 hours, we also conducted airstrikes on military facilities and aircraft from an airfield at Gurdabaya, not far from Misrata. Next slide, please. Now, these strikes were carried out last night, East Coast time, by 3 B-2 bombers launching from Whiteman Air Force Base, dropping a joint direct attack munitions. The photograph to my left shows an overview of that airfield before the strikes, and this is a dual-use airfield, meaning that it's also used for civilian commercial traffic. You can see the area. Let me point it out to you. In green, here in the center area, is where the commercial part is, and the military hardened aircraft shelters for their fighter aircraft are in these triangular shapes in the four corners. We targeted only those areas and those facilities outside the box, the civilian part used to support military fighter aircraft. Next slide, please. Here is a depiction of one of the targets, one of those triangular parts, and you can see the scar damage from the hardened aircraft shelters, one of which we've blown up here that is actually flattened. Next slide. In addition to the B-2 strikes, coalition tactical fighters also began hitting the ground forces of Colonel Gaddafi on the outskirts of Benghazi. Next slide, please. Shown here is a representation of coalition strikes against Gaddafi's ground maneuver forces about 10 miles south of Benghazi. 15 U.S. Air Force and Marine Corps aircraft participated in these attacks, as well as aircraft from France and Great Britain. They were backed up by U.S. Navy EA-18G Growlers providing electronic warfare support. Full battle reports from these strikes are still coming in, but we judge these also to have been quite successful at the halting regime's ground movement in this region. The highlighted box are some still shots from the Harrier's weapon systems video. Benghazi is not completely safe from attack, but it is certainly under less threat than it was yesterday. We believe his forces are under significant stress and suffering from both isolation and a good deal of confusion. Next slide, please. You can see here a basic laydown of how we see the battle space today, with the regime forces more pressed and less free to maneuver than they were before operations commenced. We now have the capability to patrol the airspace over Libya, and we are doing just that, shifting to a more consistent and persistent air presence. As Admiral Mullen reported this morning, the no-fly zone is effectively in place. Let me conclude by repeating what I said yesterday. This is an international effort designed to enforce a UN mandate. And since I spoke to you last, the coalition has been joined by forces from Spain, Belgium, Denmark, and Qatar. The United States is militarily in the lead, but General Ham is working diligently to effect a smooth transition to a coalition command structure in the next few days. We do not know when we will be ready to do that, and we do not yet know what that structure will look like, but we're working very hard to define it. And we remain committed to creating and then sustaining the conditions under which our allies and partners can take the lead in implementing the no-fly zone. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Okay, let's see. Louis?
Admiral,
Yesterday, you were kind of leery about, hesitant to talk about whether Colonel Gaddafi was being made a target. Is his command and control in Tripoli, or he himself now, a target?
We are focusing on the conditions that we need, on the targets that we need to enforce the no-fly zone, which is the command and control structure of that integrated air and missile defense system and the headquarters elements associated with it, and regime targets that might be moving on to the Libyan people.
So you're not going after Gaddafi?
We're not going after Gaddafi.
Courtney?
You mentioned one of the slides had specifically that there was an infantry element that was targeted, I think in the F-16, F-15 strikes. Why is that part of the mission, if the mission overall is to set the conditions in place for a no-fly zone and then to enforce that no-fly zone? Why are you going after infantry elements and troops?
Well, actually, they were mechanized positions, and they were advancing on Benghazi. And so to protect the Libyan people, we took them under attack.
So that is Gaddafi's forces, ground forces, are a legitimate target of this coalition in this ongoing.
If they are moving, if they are moving and advancing on to the opposition forces into Libya, yes, we will take them under attack.
What's the difference between protecting the Libyan people and flying close air support for the rebel forces? It seems like that's what you're doing.
I wouldn't say close air support for the opposition forces. We knew that these advance elements were moving into Benghazi with armored equipment in order to do that, and we took them under attack.
What do they have to do to stop the attacks?
What does
the Libyan ground forces have to do to stop the attacks?
If they no longer advanced on Benghazi, would be a good sign.
And does that hold for all the other, like for instance, you've got Misrata up there and Ajabaya. Does that hold for all these towns that you've mentioned? They have to just stop advancing, and that will stop the attacks?
I'm not ready to answer that particular question, sir.
Are there any advancement anywhere?
One at a time, please.
Are the troops advancing anywhere, Libyan troops?
I don't have that intel at this time.
Do you take seriously the ceasefire that has been called by Gaddafi?
I question anything out of that Gaddafi calls for. He called for a ceasefire and then told his troops to move into Benghazi after he called for a ceasefire.
Any Arab country other than Qatar will be joining the coalition?
There are other countries that are going to be joining the coalition, but they've asked that they make the announcement.
No.
Do you have an assessment of the number of ground forces that you hit?
No, the BHA has not come in yet. Bomb hit assessment has not come in yet.
You don't have any idea at all whether it was hundreds or dozens or...
I would say more in the dozens, clearly.
And do you have any estimate of civilian casualties? There's been some 48 claimed.
We have no indications of any civilian casualties.
No indication.
Sir, are we allying or coordinating these attacks with rebel forces in any way?
No, we are not at this time.
Sir, the Arab League has expressed reservations about the intensity, the operations, the tempo. Will that be a factor as you consider future operations?
Just shortly before I came in here, the Arab League endorsed our enforcement of the no-fly zone.
Are there any Arab countries participating right now in strikes or in the air operations?
We are in the process of enabling getting them into and basing them, transporting them, and getting them into the theater.
Which countries? Which Arab countries are we talking about?
Well, the one country that we have announced is Qatar. We are assisting in the movement of those forces just to help support the no-fly zone.
Matthew?
Where did the F-15 and F-16 that participated to the raid
I'm
came
not going to
from?
discuss specific basing, but they did come out of Europe.
All right. Any coalition aircraft or munitions lost?
Lost.
Shut down?
No, not at all. All of the air crew have returned safely to their home bases.
Okay, Jim?
So there's still danger to these air crew out there. I mean, there are people still firing up in the air, and there are maybe not missiles, but there are people firing ACAC guns at them, right? Can you describe what they're flying into?
Well, at this point, the fixed surface-to-air missiles, the SA-2, 3, and 5, and the early warning radars that would tell them where to point their vessels have been taken down, and we do not see them to emit. There are now mobile surface-to-air missiles, SA-6, SA-8, and a particular large number of handheld, what we call man pads, SA-7 type, and there are quite a few of those out there. To deal with the radar-guided sight, as airplanes are up there, we have airplanes that are designed to electronically attack or take under attack those particular targets, a package of those in order to do that. And then we use against the handheld, we use self-defense measures and speed and maneuver.
So,
in the back, hang on 1 second.
But will Turkey join the operation? Did you discuss it with them?
I'm sorry, say again, sir?
Will Turkey also join the coalition?
I have not received that they've officially asked for us to announce that or that they're still under consideration.
Jen?
So if there are explosions being heard from anti-aircraft weapons in Tripoli, what should we assume those are? Those are mobile systems?
We haven't, the surface-to-air guns, the AAA, we haven't directly targeted those fixed sites or the mobile sites, so they could be any of those, either one of those.
So if you're saying that that Gaddafi's forces have to stop advancing, and that would stop the attacks on Gaddafi's forces, does the reverse hold true? If they stop and the rebel forces then move into their area, are you saying they're not allowed to engage the rebel forces under any circumstances, and they have to lay their arms down, or they simply have to stop forward movement?
At this point, I'm not ready to specify the messaging that we have put out there.
Do you think the Libyan Air Force is capable to fly helicopters, combat helicopters?
Yes, even in all of the no-fly zones that we have set up over the years, we never fully prevented airplanes from flying. At some point, if it's a vast amount of airspace, so if he chose to, he might be able to get something up. I wouldn't rule out that nothing will fly by any stretch. I will tell you that we will anything that does fly that we detect, we will engage.
Yes, ma'am, in the back.
You said you haven't targeted any fixed or mobile radar sites yet. Why not? Are they not a danger?
Well, we've attacked the fixed radar sites. We haven't attacked the mobile surface-to-air radar sites. The AAA sites, whether they're fixed or they're mobile, there's so many of them that it's better to avoid them than it is to try and attack each one of them individually.
There's some concern you would move those too.
Okay, you've been listening to a news conference with Vice Admiral William Gortney, who's been spelling out details of the operations over Libya. He said that they'd significantly degraded missile capability. Also, they had attacked with B-2 bombers an airfield near Misrata, and also coalition had hit ground forces on the outskirts of Benghazi, around 10 miles south of Benghazi, because they had judged that they were advancing. He'd also said that the no-fly zone was effective now, and he also went on to say that the US was militarily in the lead at the moment, but would be passing on to a coalition structure within the next few days. And significantly, he also said, we're not going after Gaddafi. Let's bring in Rosalind Jordan, who's live for us in Washington, D.C. So, Rosalind, quite a lot of technical detail about what they've been doing. What would you say are the significant elements of what he's been spelling out there?
Well, I think the last point that you just highlighted, Lauren, the fact that the coalition, according to Admiral Gortney, is not going after Colonel Muammar Gaddafi is significant. This underscores not just the U.S.'s message that it's not interested in fomenting any sort of regime change, but it also underscores the message of UN Security Council Resolution 1973, which simply said that all options were available to members of the coalition, including military options, for the specific purpose of protecting the Libyan people from attack by their own government. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it's also significant that he indicated a willingness to, quote, engage, and that's the military expression, any attempts by Libyan military forces to advance on any areas that have been claimed and retained by the opposition there in Libya.
Interesting also that he said that at this stage they're not coordinating with rebel forces. Is that surprising?
I think it brings a bit of clarity to something that we've been discussing here on Al Jazeera English all day, which is how far is the coalition actually going to go in terms of protecting civilians? Does that include the people who have left the Gaddafi regime, either military officials or diplomatic officials who are now trying to lead and to oppose the Gaddafi regime? Does that mean that any actions that they're taking against the Libyan military specifically will be supported by any air support, any ground level support, anything of that nature? And Admiral Gortney was very quick to say, no, that is not our purpose. What we're looking at is simply the actions of two sides, the people who are being attacked by the military, and then, of course, the military itself, and doing all that the coalition can, to keep the two sides away from each other.
Okay, Rosalind Jordan, thank you very much indeed. Rosalind Jordan live there in Washington for us.